Hello everyone, I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One on One. This week we're talking to Derek Brunson. Derek is one of the elite mixed martial arts fighters in the entire world. In his 7-year professional career, he's won 18 fights and lost just 5. 13 of those 18 victories happened in the very first round. He's ranked 7th in the world in the middleweight class by UFC, and he has beaten some of the biggest name fighters in the entire sport. Derek is a Hoggard High School graduate, a UNC Pembroke graduate, where he was a 3-time All-American wrestler. He's a father of 3 children, and he's also a businessman, opening his first gymnasium in Wilmington earlier this year. The amazing thing about Derek Brunson is, for all he has accomplished so far as an athlete, he didn't start playing competitive sports until his senior year in high school.
I grew up in a low-income family. You know, we actually grew up in Keller Homes projects, the ones that were knocked down and then they kind of rebuilt them back up, and they I think they're for older, citizens.
Yeah.
But I grew up there, and MMA definitely wasn't my first option. When I was younger, my dad had me read this book, Ben Carson. So I read that book. So he was kind of one of the guys. I was like, I want to be a doctor, So I grew up, wanting to be a doctor, and sports was my outlet. And then a little bit later, high school, I started pursuing sports pretty heavy.
When you were growing up and you went to Hoggard, did you play sports at Hoggard?
Yeah, funny enough, I did cheerleading from 7th grade up until my senior year in high school, but I didn't play any sports. Only my senior year I decided. It was one of my friends, we hung out. He came out maybe his senior year to do cheerleading, Everybody wanted to hang out with girls 24/7. They thought it was cool, So he decided to cheerlead. And before he played sports, and he wrestled, and he broke his arm like maybe his 10th grade year. So he took a whole 11th grade year off, and then he said, I'm going to come back and wrestle my senior year. So we started hanging out, and he was like, I'm going to wrestle this year. Let's wrestle. I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
So, and then he said he's going to play football. I was like, all right, let's do it. So I played every single sport my senior year with no previous experience. And I pretty much had scholarships and everything, and it was crazy.
Don't you think it's kind of ironic that somebody who makes his living now in sports as an athlete didn't play sports but 1 year in high school?
Yeah, it was crazy. And like you said, you mentioned you had Connor Barth on him. He was actually my kicker. Connor was on my team. So it's funny. Connor was in the 9th grade, and we used to be like, Connor, kick the ball harder. He's like, I'm trying. And he's like already kicking it out the end zone.
Yeah.
Like, he was like always good, even as like a 9th grader. But yeah, I didn't. Only thing I did throughout from like 7th to like 11th grade was cheerleading, and then all of a sudden, football, track, wrestling. I did all that.
Yeah, because you were good at like everything you tried that year.
Yeah. I believe wrestling. I won a state championship in freestyle and Greco, and then I placed 3rd in like the big wrestling, and then track. I placed 7th in the 400, and then wrestling and football. Yeah, I was pretty good at football too.
Do you ever wonder, had you played some of those sports for 2 and 3 and 4 years, maybe you're doing very well now in UFC,
right.
But do you ever wonder what may have happened had you had more training for some of those things?
That is a good question, but sometimes you have people who've played all their life and they don't have that passion anymore. They kind of like burnt down on it. Or they might have had a crazy injury, so, they're not able to do it anymore. So who knows, that could have been a situation, but, hindsight, the more time, the more knowledge,
Yeah. You went to UNC Pembroke, and you said you did wrestling. Now, you wrestled at UNCP as well.
Right.
Did you start having any kind of thoughts as to what you wanted to do? Was wrestling a possibility as far as the future is concerned when you were at that point?
Well, wrestling was like a closed-end thing. Like, there was nothing after college wrestling,
right?
So it's funny because MMA, all the old school like wrestlers, that was the thing. MMA was the thing because early on you'll get a wrestler who would take a guy down, and that was the end of a match,
Right.
And then now the sport has grown to like, now everybody just want to stand up, and people know how to stop takedowns. But yeah, it was nothing after college wrestling. So MMA was right there, and it was actually I actually fell into MMA trying to pursue like Olympic style wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
After I graduated from college, I was working as an in-home therapist, had a caseload working with families, and then all of a sudden I was like, hey, I want to compete again, So wrestling, Olympic style wrestling was the only way, go to tournaments here and there. So I went to a local gym and I was training with some guys that I knew from college, and they were wrestlers, and they were now amateur MMA fighters. So I go with them, and I'll take them down. I was the better of the wrestler.
Right.
And then it's like, let's keep going. And when you keep going, when you take somebody down, that's the jiu-jitsu aspect with the grappling and the submissions. And they were like, you should fight. I was like, nah. They're like, you should fight. I was like, nah. And then one day I was like, all right, might as well, So, yeah, I tried it out. I started doing boxing and kickboxing and more jiu-jitsu,
mm-hmm.
and then I just kind of, fell into it.
How long did it take you? Now, you knew the wrestling. You had the wrestling
Right.
down. How long did it take you to incorporate some of that other stuff to the point where you were confident, maybe, going into the ring? Because I imagine the first time going into a ring like that at a fight, there had to be a couple of questions in the back of your mind.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing was I was a 3-time All-American in college, so I was a successful wrestler. So when anybody had to fight me, they would look me up, and they would see, they could find a lot on Google, wrestling tournament. So automatically they thought in their mind, this guy's going to take me down. So I would fake at their legs, and I'd come up with a big punch. So it kind of threw them off.
Mm-hmm.
He was expecting to wrestle, and I hit him with a punch, So then my hands started to develop, and it was kind of I was intertwining the two, wrestling and boxing.
You started to bring that into your arsenal a little bit more. But I imagine it wasn't too long before people started to figure that out.
Yeah, but
with YouTube and stuff like that, I'm sure they saw those videos.
Correct. And it's funny because now I'm dealing with people calling me a striker when I'm like a 3-time NCAA All-American, and it's funny because I had one of my agent was working on a fight one time, and this guy came off a big win against the top 14 or 15 guy in the nation,
mm-hmm.
And this guy, he just beat the 14 or 15 guy in the whole world, and he comes, and my agent was trying to get a fight lined up, and he was like, well, no, I need 5 months to prepare for Derek. He's a striker. And I'm like, what? I'm a wrestler, My hands are working good, but yeah.
Well, that had to be flattering. If they thought that your hands were good enough to call you a striker, when really you thought that your wrestling was even more better than that side.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely, mixed martial arts is a sport where you definitely want to keep them guessing and, mix it up.
When did you have that first MMA fight? 2009, is that what it was, or 2010?
2010, I believe, yeah. I had my first amateur fight. It was down here at the Sports Center, and, it was Carolina Fight Promotions. It was crazy. Or excuse me, no, 2010 was in Myrtle Beach. It was Carolina Fight Promotions. They were solely pretty much based out of Wilmington, but they had fights in, they had one time in Raleigh, and then they had one in Myrtle Beach. Mm-hmm. But it was in Myrtle Beach. And I fought. Do
you remember walking into the ring at that time and the fight and then being done afterwards?
I do. I remember walking. It's funny because I still have the same feeling I had when, I believe, at that fight, it was a pretty decent show for that, where I was, the stage that I was at. I think maybe 2,000 people in the stands, which,
mm-hmm.
Pretty
That's
good.
That's a nice-sized crowd, yeah.
Yeah. But now, you go and it's, 20 to, sometimes 10 to 50,000 people in the stands, and then,
sure.
Nobody's watching on TV. But I had that same feel that I have now. It's like you make that walk, and then you're there, and you're like, they're like, close the door, and you're like, okay. Like, some people get nervous.
Let's do this.
Yeah. It's more of a, neutral, calm feeling. I guess because I've always been a hard worker. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I'm kind of at peace with, the preparation and the training that I put in, and I'm like, okay, I'm good.
What happened that first fight?
Same thing what I was telling you earlier. Me and the guy squared off. I feinted at him like I was going to take him down. I, kind of jumped at his legs, and he went back. I was like, I'm going to do it one more time. If he does the same thing, I'm going to punch him. So I feinted at his legs, and he sprawled out really heavy, moving his legs back, and his face open. Boom, caught him with a punch. And I believe that fight was under 30 seconds. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. That was the first start.
I was going to say, how much of it is strategy? Because those of us who watch, we've got to say, you're just getting in there, and it's a brawl.
Yeah.
But it's not a brawl. There's strategy to the whole fight. Getting in there, you got to know what the other guy wants to do, what he's more prone to do. How much does strategy come into it?
It's funny because it's all strategy, and I believe. So one fight, in my last, I don't know, 8 fights. It was one fight. I mean, I was chasing this, the UFC, it's all about contracts and getting big contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So I was up for a new contract, but I had one more fight left. So I was on this nice 4th knockout streak in the first round, and I was like, okay, I'm going to knock this guy out, and I'm going to go to the UFC and be like, you guys are going to pay me a lot of money, because that's good bargaining,
Sure, yeah.
So that time, I went out there and I didn't have strategy. I just was brawling, and it didn't turn out good for me, But MMA is like all strategy because everybody is so good that it's like a chess match, A lot of people think MMA is so, vicious and dangerous, but it's really not. Like, it's like boxing. You might get boom, 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 hit. You take all these blows. The ref will give you time to recover. MMA, if you get clipped one time, the ref will jump in and stop it. And people are like, what? I was still fighting,
Right.
But it's more of the fighter's safety and, football. Boom, how many times they run full on like a car accident?
Yeah.
Boom,
Yeah.
head on head. That doesn't happen in MMA. If you take one of those type of buzzes, the ref is going to jump in and stop it.
Yeah, they're pretty strict as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it's very controlled, and it's a chess match. And guys know that they can't, you can't afford to get deemed not even so much good, but any type of, to where you're staggering or whatever, because the ref will stop it. Our sport is very safe, and it's definitely a chess match,
So you turn pro. You won your first 9 matches, right?
Right.
I mean, you're kind of sailing on that uphill level. Tell me about that.
Yeah, like you said early on, I was 6-0. I was 6-0, all first round finishes. I think 1 submission and the rest knockouts. So the organization, which was the number 2 organization at the time, you had the UFC and you had Strikeforce. And Strikeforce wanted to sign me. The UFC was interested also. They was talking with my agent. They said, okay, this guy has 6 fights. The guys in the UFC, these guys been around for a long time. We would like to see him get at least 2 more fights. So whenever he get here, he can be a little bit more experienced,
Right.
So my agent was like, I tell you what, here's what we do. We go to Strikeforce first, give you time to grow. We aired on Showtime, so it was crazy because that was my first big start,
People here could dial you up and see what it's like, yeah.
For sure. Everybody can watch, it's on national TV. So, I mean, Showtime's a huge network, so I was very excited. So, the first, I had my first 6 fights and then got signed with Strikeforce, and then a little after, the UFC actually bought Strikeforce, purchased Strikeforce. So then they took all the top guys and they got other guys and said, hey, get some more fights. Hopefully we can see you in the future.
Now, you got there, is that where your first loss was?
First loss, yeah. Well, no, so it was funny because I signed with Strikeforce, and they were like, okay, we're going to let you grow in the sport. We're going to give guys at your level. And then all of a sudden, it kind of still staggered out in the sense of I was undefeated. Now, I know this big prospect.
Right.
And they were like, well, we don't have any fights. And they wasn't really telling anybody, but they were in the process of selling to the UFC.
Gotcha.
So
you were in limbo kind of about it, right?
So they said, hey, we'll allow you to take a fight outside the organization. So I took a fight outside of the organization, and I went and I fought this guy who was like a big-time UFC guy I fought him in a smaller promotion, and they got me so, the decision was crazy. I mean, because all the, huge MMA sites were paying attention to this matchup because at that time I was like the prospect in the world for
undefeated, getting ready to get in the UFC.
95% of the people was like, wow, you got robbed. It was bad. It was bad.
Now you're up there. You're a professional. You're standing there. How do you keep from absolutely going berserk when you're up there and you think you're going to win, and all of a sudden they hold the other guy's hand up? I mean, do you have to curtail your emotions because you can't make a bad name for yourself?
Right.
So I imagine you have to kind of be at least a little bit calm. But after going in there and just beating the other guy's brains in for 3 rounds, how do you control yourself at that second in time?
Yeah, I mean, it's martial arts. It's funny. Martial arts is. I see some guys that come in, and even guys that come to the gym or first time guys. They're like, I want to beat somebody up. I punch this guy, and I'm looking at him like, that's not martial arts. You know what I mean? That's not what we out here training for. This is a sport. This is, at best, if you don't never want to, pursue it as a career, is to protect yourself, not to go out and beat people up or try things on people. It's almost that quiet confidence. How you okay, you got this big guy who's like, I'm gonna beat you up, and you're small, and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're big.
I got the confidence, yeah.
Right, I know what's going
Right.
to happen, you know. So that was more, I mean, you got to learn how to control yourself in those situations. So it's a controlled environment, and if things don't go your way, you're upset, but, you know, still.
Kind of grin and bear it, bite the bottom lip kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Sure.
So when you get into UFC in December 2012, that's what I have, what does that feel like? Derek's finally made it. It's like the major leagues of if you're playing minor league ball and then go to the major leagues.
It's crazy. So it was the most unideal situation in the sense of, I used to watch TV and watch UFC, and I'll see this guy. I was like, that guy is so wild, but he knocks people out. This guy, red hair, Chris Levy, he just come out there, boom, knock people out. And he'll be in fights, he's just getting hit, and then he's just, boom, knock someone out. And I always saw him. I was like, I'll take him down, I'll beat him up. And all of a sudden, I get the call, and they're like, hey, won't you fight Chris Levy? I'm like, I'm like, oh, man, this is a scary guy. It's like, he goes and try to knock you out. Like, there's no, like, in between. He goes in there and bring the fight. So my agent called, and it was short notice, too. Like, I was kind of like I was in limbo.
How long did you have? Yeah.
I had 10 days to make a decision. Yeah, wow. And this guy is like, you know, he's like super legend, probably, you know, future Hall of Famer, you know, just known for like his brawling comeback style. And I'm like, so my agent calls me and like, okay, this when the UFC was purchased Strikeforce. It's like, they called you, this was in December, I believe. Yeah. They called and it was like, hey, my agent called and was like, hey, UFC offered a fight against you and Chris Levy. I was like, he was like, well, here's the options. It's November, late November or early December. He's like, you can either take this fight or you just have to wait till like February and March. And you know, when it came to like pretty much Strikeforce days, I went all in. You know, I was like, that was like dedicated to my craft. So I was only like fighting at the time. So I was like, okay, financially, I was like, I guess, I was like, you know, I'll take it for sure. So my thing was I cracked down on my diet. I was like running in, you know, I was like, hey, you know, I'm in it now. So I called him. It's funny. I called him back like an hour later, and I was like, never mind. I'm good. I'll just wait until like March, whatever. I was like, I'm good. He was like, well, I already called the UFC and told him. I was like, okay, all right. Let's go with it.
You're all in now, right?
Yeah. So, but yeah, went out there. Was able to use my wrestling. That was my, you know, I was able to use my wrestling. That was my main focus. You know, take him down, put him on his back. You know, control the fight, and I was able to do that. And I picked up the win. And yeah, that was crazy.
Did you feel like at that point in time you had maybe arrived?
I did.
You were starting to make a name for yourself, although you were a prospect early. But now you're in the UFC and making some noise.
Right, yeah, because I was a huge prospect, and then, you know, I lost one, I got robbed on, and then I came back and I fought again to like a guy who was like top 3 in the whole world. It's like you go from getting robbed. But see, they don't judge you. They're like, oh, you won that fight for sure. I'm like, but I didn't get the win. So they're like, we still keep you in the top echelon.
Right, wins and losses aren't everything they judge somebody on.
Right, because they, you know, it's all about the promotion. Like, that was a ripoff, you know?
Yeah.
So I go back and I'm fighting this, you know, top guy, and I'm like, I got a lot to prove in this fight. And I go out there and try to rush it, and then I end up not winning that, so I kind of like fell under the radar just a little bit. And then, you know, I get this opportunity, and I went out and made the most of it. So I like, you know, I remember, it was funny, it was in Vegas at the MGM, and I remember like, you know, walking back and walking through, and I was like, wow, it was a surreal moment, just like all the hard work, and you know.
I was gonna ask you. You walk out of the, you know, you're walking in. It's one thing. After you're done, after you win, you climb out of the Octagon, and you're walking back to the locker room. What's that mentally like for you?
It's funny because all of my after you finish a fight, like it's like, in order to prepare for the fight, it's so much. It's like a lot of running. It's pretty much like being exhausted, making every workout as hard as possible to prepare for that moment. So when it's done, it's like a big relief, but you can't even really like celebrate. You know, you can just, it's just like a whole, it's just like, I guess it's like a peaceful, like,
exhaustion.
Right. So it's funny, like, after all of my fights, a lot of people go party. I'm like, cool. I'm like chilling with my before the UFC used to write checks, so I'll be, you know, sitting out with my check, and I'll be like, This feels good, but yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's definitely, exhausting, afterwards.
The Yoel Romero fight in 2014, you had that thing won.
I know.
You had that thing won.
I know.
And everybody and their brother knows it, and then you just get caught late in the fight. What did you learn from that?
It was a lot of things I learned from that.
Was that any? Let me start back here. Were you at all intimidated taking on this guy? Because you talk about a legend in the sport.
Right.
This is a huge legend, huge name in the sport.
Right.
So you're going in. Did you train any differently? Were you in any way kind of, under the shadows of this guy?
No, because whenever I get the matchup, I talk to myself. I'm like, hey, it's either me or him. It's like, I fought like, Anderson, and like you said, Yoel he's a legend in wrestling. The guy, I believe from all the people who wrestle for the U.S., they consider him one of the best wrestlers in the history of wrestling. Yeah. His resume is just all he competed. I think he got a silver medal in the Olympics, and he lost to the American Kel Sanderson, which is our best wrestler of all time.
Right.
And he actually beat Kel Sanderson twice during the year, and he loses to him for the whole match.
Medal, yeah.
But he beat him. I think he beat him 3 times, like pretty bad.
Yeah, so this guy's got the cred.
Right, exactly, especially for an American fan. So yeah. So yeah, that fight was crazy because, like you said, I had that fight in the bag. I guess it's in the terms of sports. They say someone choked like Atlanta in the Patriots. They were hit by all those. I mean, if that wasn't the case, it was more of a nutrition. I learned how to hydrate. I started taking that serious. I started taking my conditioning really serious. We can't let that happen again because, even now, that guy is number 2 in the world, and
so the possibility exists you might fight him again.
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Right. So what happened? Did he just catch you with a lucky shot? Because did you have a plan going in against him, and it worked, I guess, for almost 2.5 rounds before you got hurt?
Well, during the fight, normally before we were allowed to get IVs to kind of rehydrate because we cut weight, whatever.
Right.
So I went to go rehydrate, and my team left my fluids in the room at weigh-ins. So I get to weigh-ins, and I turn around, I'm like, okay, where's my fluids? And they're like, you got them. They're like looking around.
Oh, no.
And so I didn't have it. So by the time I got to the room to get my IV, I was so dehydrated still, I couldn't get an IV. So I was left with only trying to rehydrate with fluids. And when you try to rehydrate with fluids, if you don't know how to do it properly, the water sits in your stomach, so you're not able to eat. So I had a belly full of water, and I wasn't able to eat because I was so full. So I got out there, and in the last round, I had nothing left. It was just pretty much like, being on a car with no gas.
Did he notice that, do you know?
Well, I don't really think he noticed that. He just had no other option but to go for it because he lost. He was losing the fight. It was no way he wins that fight unless
he had to either get you knocked out or submit you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So he pretty much went for it, But it's crazy because let's rewind it back to right now. A minute and 30 left. I can move around. And not get hit for it. I mean, that's easy, That's the easy part. And it's like, but everything happens for a reason,
What did that teach you?
Yeah, I learned to take my conditioning more serious. I learned to clean up my diet and take that more serious, and also just learn the simple things as far as how to hydrate and stuff like that.
How much work then after that loss did you have to put in to get back up to where you were before the loss? I mean, in notoriety, in rankings, and the fact that people wanted to see Brunson fight this guy, or they wanted to see Brunson fight this guy. Because after a loss, it doesn't matter who you are, after a loss you're going to drop down at least a notch or two in people's minds.
It was funny, though, because he was one of those guys, he had the it factor. He was a scary guy to the masses. So it's funny, people were like, wow. They were kind of like, wow, you performed well. He pretty much got fortunate to get that victory.
Okay.
So it kind of did more for me. It didn't do more for me personally. I was upset.
I know.
I took it as a loss is a loss. There's really no moral victories in my opinion, especially when you're so high.
Sure.
Even at that time, I was considered one of the top 20 guys in the world. Mm-hmm. So there's really no more victories because your goal is to be one. But people were definitely like, wow, because they know what this guy possessed.
The insiders knew how well you did.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it put more notice. It put more notice. Everybody's like, okay, You know, so, and then right after that fight, I went on like a huge, 5-fight winning streak. And,
Yeah. Now, that's the one that broke your jaw. When was the jaw-breaking
in
fight?
the UF fight.
Okay.
In
Okay.
the UF
That
fight.
was the one. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
what messed up my jaw.
the worst injury you had?
Yeah, it's funny but you know what? That's better than like a knee or a leg or arm injury, because those you never know how you'll come back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Did you realize that he had done damage at that time when you got hit?
I didn't. I think I was so exhausted, I was so dehydrated that I was just like, just trying to move and try to like, keep active, and I just had nothing, So,
Yeah. So it wasn't until afterwards that you realized that he had broken the jaw? So then you had the next 2 years, roughly, you had to kind of continue to fight. You went on a winning streak. And then the next, I guess, really big one was the Anderson Silva fight earlier this year, in February of this year. Talk to me about that fight.
Yeah, it was crazy because that was another short notice fight. So I forgot who was supposed to fight on that card, but either way, they lost a big fight on that card. So the only person with huge name to get this pay-per-view back up was Anderson, and I was his dance partner. It was like, this guy, we can sell a fight between these two. He's on this huge streak, and you have Anderson. I had name value at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So they put the fight together. I trained for it. They had like, the camera crew in town from Fox, and those guys was like, in my life for like, a couple weeks, follow me around. So, and then I had to cut weight and do everything else and do my obligations. So it was a big fight, a lot of attention. And I go out, we fight, and once again, that was another fight where 90% of the people was like, you're definitely going to win this. And then right after, the judges sure enough raised his hand, and everybody's just losing. They're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, how in the world?
That couldn't have been a good feeling when you were standing there.
No, it definitely wasn't a good feeling, because a guy with that type of name value, you definitely want a win over him. You don't want it to like, and it's funny, I hear people like, they're like, some fans be like, you can't leave it to the judges. I'm like, okay, well, that's what we have judges for,
Right.
So, you show up, you do your job, you score as it should be. Don't, shouldn't be in awe of a fighter, of what he's done in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and, kind of looking for him to do something. You gotta look at the fight and judge it a little closely.
One of the interesting things is, at the end of everything there, didn't he call you over on the mat? What did he say to you, if you can share that? He actually called you over, and the two of you kind of, I don't want to say embraced, but kind of did like two combatants afterwards, like, nice job. But can you share maybe what he might have said?
Yeah, he said, I had my time. He said, it's your time now. He said, it's your time now. And it's funny, that was before he read the decision. I believe, for sure, he thought he lost the fight,
Yeah.
So he was like, yeah, it's your time now, good job, good fight. So
That had to do something for you. I mean, even if not professionally, at least personally. That had to do something that somebody of his stature, again, another Hall of Famer, thought enough to share a couple of words with you after that fight.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It definitely was a good feeling, It just, the mood was a little somber after the decision was ready.
Oh, sure.
Like, oh, man, not this again.
Yeah.
But, a legend of the sport to, truly, say, hey, that was a good fight, and, it's your time to, carry the sport. It was good.
Nice. And then Machida in October?
Yeah, that was crazy.
But that was, would you call that one your best overall performance so far? Or is there another one that you would think that you performed? Because, that didn't take long, number one. But number two, it just seemed like you came out immediately. Would you call that one your best fight so far?
I probably would, in the sense of that guy is really, 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 really good. He had a layoff because he had a suspension for some PEDs, and man, I was watching. So last week, this guy who's the number 2 light heavyweight on the planet, big guy, Machida wasted him, like a couple, maybe like 2 years ago, he beat him. And this guy is like really, really good.
Yeah.
And then also this guy who just left the UFC to go to another organization because he got paid more, who just beat the former champ before he left. Machida beat him like 3 fights ago.
Yeah.
So Machida, this dude is a legend in the sport. Great fighter, high skill set, and it's funny. I learned from the Anderson fight. My agent was like, "Don't be all smiling with Anderson, because before at the like pre-fights and like we do media all week and then we'll face off and like shake hands and he's like laughing, and then at the fight he got in my face, he was like, and then I went to shake his hand and he just like bowed at me because he was like, it's go time. So I kind of learned from that fight. Him and Machito are actually really good buddies. They've been training together forever. I learned from that fight that this guy's a former champ and they're gonna try to win the mental warfare. So I was like, in this fight I'm gonna get in his face at weigh-ins and let him know, hey, I'm here to fight.
So you think that worked?
I think so, because it's funny. After he weighed in, I got off the scale and I walked in his face and then I looked up at him and then he was looking at me and then he threw up his hand. He was like, I guess he kind of felt he needed to counter, and I threw up my hand and then he was like, and he like put his hand out. I was like, you got to kind of set the tone with those type of things. Let a guy know,
not going to give him the mental edge.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Because if people like, for instance, I'm not a big pet person. This might be a stupid analogy, but from what I do understand, they say if a big dog see you and they know you're scared, they're gonna try to like come and try to bump you, whatever. They're gonna feel it. Sure. It's just like fighting. You can see it, you can feel it. If a guy's scared or nervous or jittery, you can feel it.
Can you really?
Yeah. And it's like when you got him there, you want to keep him there. So you want to do everything, even if you're a little nervous. Let's say you're a little nervous, but you see he's showing it. Then you want to kind of like keep egging him on just to keep him in that spot where he's at, because he seemed a little unsure.
After that fight, you called out Luke Rockhold.
Right. Yeah. Luke's number 2. Ranked number 2 in my division, and that's a big fight. That guy, he went and beat one of my friends this past fight, who was really, really good. And then Luke just went out there, second round, took him down, mounted him, and was able to punch it till he got the finish, But a huge name, former UFC champ, young guy.
So is that part of the showmanship?
I mean, in this era, you have to call your shots. You have to say, you have to make claims. If you go off a good performance, you can't just be like, oh, okay, thank you. You got it's in your best interest to let them know who you want to fight.
Sure.
And it's not demonstrative. It's not like egotistical or anything like that. It's just, this is a sport, and you have to let it be known, because sometimes if you're just kind of quiet, you might get looked over. Luckily, I have the fighting style to kind of, it's hard to look over, but you definitely have to let guys know what direction you want to go in, who you want to fight.
You've been pretty harsh or critical on PED users.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
It comes from me just busting my butt, always trying to study and research and trying to find out better ways of doing things as far as nutrition, or like you say you're getting older, naturally boosting your TRT or your whatever. Just looking online as far as if it's like honey or whatever, I do the research. I study, I work hard, and these guys get in here and they just cheat the system, kind of like, other sports. Like, I used to watch baseball a lot in college. I used to watch baseball in type papers, and it was very slow paced that I could kind of like go back and forth. When they started with all, like, I used to watch McGuire, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds, and they started with all steroids, I stopped watching it, I stopped watching it because it takes away. It's like this. I hear a lot of people saying, well, if I would have done steroids, I could have did the same thing. You know what I mean? So it takes away the pureness of the sport, give guys more power, more cardio. And if I'm not doing it, you got a huge advantage you're trying to create,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm totally against that. And, yeah, I love it.
You've been. I mean, there are people who are against it, but there are people. I don't think there's anybody as vocal against it as you have been.
It's funny though. It's a catch-22 because I know a lot of top guys. Like, I'm friends with a lot of guys who are like, legends in the sport, Hall of Famers, and it's like David popped for steroids, and it's like a catch-22. It's like, how much do I talk about it? Because they're my friends. They follow me on social media, and I don't want to kind of offend them, but I mean, at a certain point, I got to stand up for what's right, and I got to let these guys know, back in the old school MMA, steroids was a thing. Like, everybody did it, but now it's a different era. Like, you got to evolve with the time, You can't keep, trying to cheat the game.
You're 6th in the world now?
6th.
Middleweight?
Yes.
Where do you go from here? What's next? I mean, how do you bump up? You have to fight somebody higher ranked than you in order to bump up, right?
Yep. That's it. I want the title shot. The title shot brings more money, more everything, more opportunities. And it's just, as a competitor, when you're right there, you want to take that next step.
Yeah.
Man, the world is pretty big. And to be sixth in the world, out of you look at baseball, football, it's a U.S. sport.
Yeah.
Our sport is in every single country. That's why you got a guy like Conor McGregor, more popular than any athlete on the planet. Why? Because the UFC is in every single country.
Yeah.
So we have that, the chance to be a global superstar. So
where's the best place you fought of all the places around the world you fought? Maybe not necessarily because of the ring or the location, but just because you got a chance to go pretty cool places around the world to fight. Where's the best place you fought?
Well, let's talk about the three. So out of my 4 last fights, 3 of them have been outside the country.
Yeah.
Brazil was good. Brazil was cool. I fought in Australia, which probably was the nicest. It's like a bigger Wilmington, I guess. Bigger buildings, kind of like a New York City, but the Wilmington vibe. It has the beach, big buildings, skyscrapers, very nice looking. So as far as like scenery, I would say Australia. New Zealand was one of the other countries I fought in. Love New Zealand. It was kind of like a small Australia,
Yeah.
But what I like about New Zealand is it's kind of like it gave me that Hawaii vibe. Like all the fans were like, as soon as you get off the airplane, or they're like, can I get a picture? Can I get a picture?
Nice.
And even when I'm leaving, like, can I get a picture? And then after the fight, during the fight, they're like, hey, thanks for coming out. Like, we appreciate you coming to New Zealand.
Always done nice when people say thank you.
Yeah, and they were very appreciative. Like I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But these guys are very appreciative that the UFC came there and that we, a big name fighter would want to come there, and
You ever been scared in the Octagon?
No, I've never been scared.
You ever been intimidated?
Never been intimidated.
Good for you.
Yeah, those are. If you're scared or intimidated, I might suggest in martial arts. I think if you're scared and intimidated, you got to shake it to, if I lose, I lose.
Yeah.
You can't have that intimidation factor though.
Right.
You got to be like, well, I'm just going to give my best. You got to have that type of attitude before you're intimidated.
Because you said, you got to fend for yourself. It's you and it's the other guy.
It's gunshot.
You mentioned the money's better. You mentioned money a couple times. Without getting too personal, without getting into where you might not want to share, how is the money? Is it worth what you go through? Do you get paid well enough to train, to go in there for 3, 5 rounds, whatever it is, in a combat with another man? Do you get paid well enough to keep doing it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I have a college degree, and I don't know, maybe I make like 20 times more than what my college degree would allow.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot in the sport, but when you hit that championship level, the money is infinite. You as good as you are, as much as you promote, then that's how much money you're going to make. Conor's making, $20 million, a fight, So, I'm not making that type of money, but I'm doing pretty well.
Okay.
And, the higher you go up and the closer I get to the title, you definitely scratching that $1 million per fight range.
What did having young children do? Did it change you at all? I know you've got 3 children. Did having young children again now did that do anything to change you in your preparation or in your fighting?
Well, so I have my first daughter my senior year in college. So it just gives you that whole new perspective. It's like you have a person that's dependent on you. And I think every parent, 85% of the parents want their kids to have a better life than what they had.
Sure.
So it's always that constant, okay, I'm a thinker. So I say, okay, I want that. Okay, now how do I go about getting that?
Right.
So, it just put things in perspective and, makes you, focus a little bit more and give you a whole different new, passionate outlook on life.
What about your 2 girls?
Yeah, they're energetic. They love wrestling. They're pretty silly, goofy, laid back. So.
Do they know what Dad does?
Yeah, they do. They always like, Dad, can we go to Brazil to the fight? I'm like, really? It's in Brazil. I was like, when we get one in the U.S., it's pretty close. I'll let y'all go. So hopefully, we got one UFC's coming back to North Carolina since 2008, maybe something. It was a while ago. I think they went to Charlotte, but they're coming back to Charlotte this time at the Spectrum. So, yeah.
Do they know the dangers? I mean, do you share with them the dangers? And, Dad trains for this. I'm not just walking in untrained. Do you have to talk to them about it?
Oh, yeah, they know. They know when I'm going to the gym, they know, like, hey, this ain't going to be a fun workout. This is going to be intense, tiring. I got to put a lot of work in. And it's funny, they have never watched my fight live. They always watch it DVR,
Right.
So, because, yeah, it's an intense sport, but it's like the better you get, the more of a chess match it is. So it takes away from the so-called danger of putting yourself at harm. You still get popped up, I guess, but
sure,
it's a chess match.
What did opening up your own gym do for Derek Brunson?
It gave me the opportunity to, I'm not doing it for the money. I don't need the money. So it gives me the opportunity to, I guess give back a little bit. We have, people who, want to aspire to be martial artists, and, we have, kids who need an activity, after school activity, and also we have great coaches over there who, we always talk about discipline. We always talk about doing the right thing. So I think it kind of gives me that I'm giving back, and I feel good about, what I'm doing, and giving back to the community and trying to, give people positive role models.
Could you be a coach one day?
I could be. I kind of am a coach now, but I don't like when people refer to me as a coach. I'm like, stop calling me coach. Why? Well, it's more of I'm still an athlete,
Gotcha.
Competitive athlete. So I don't want to even I am a coach, but I don't want the title right now.
Right.
On
down the line, though, you could see yourself training and being, in somebody's corner in UFC if somebody wants you to be on one of their side.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely in the future.
Good deal. Had I brought Derek Brunson in here 10 years ago and sat you down in here and said, look, you're going to be sixth ranked in the world, you're going to do well in UFC, could you have seen yourself be here 10 years ago?
I probably would have been like, maybe. I knew I would have had the capability, but I would have been like, okay, well, I need to sit down and really think about what he said and see how I'm gonna get there. So
right.
I can always see myself achieving stuff, just like, I'm a go-getter. So some people might take my personality as far as like, my friends are used to it now. Like, I'm like, yo, like, this is not right, like, we got to do better than this. Like, we got to do better, especially when it comes like gym and running things. And before, some people would be like, well, try to argue back, but they understand. I'm just trying to do things. I treat everything the same. I want to be successful. You have to have that drive towards it. You can't just let it exist. You have to be like active. So,
play out the next 5 years for me.
Next 5 years, man, I think I'm gonna definitely, touch that title, be living comfortably, fighting still, maybe, I think MMA is definitely a mature man's game, and the better I get, it'll become a chess match, and my skills will be on display. So yeah, we'll see as far as fighting, but I think I'll definitely be living comfortably. For sure.
I must tell you, it is neat to have somebody from Wilmington do as well as you have in this sport, because it has taken over the world. Yeah. Boxing is no longer anywhere near what it used to be. MMA has really taken over. And to see somebody from Wilmington doing as well as you are, it's kind of fun to watch and follow your career. It really has been.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Derek, I appreciate you coming in, and thanks for being on the podcast. We're going to follow you. We know you get that title shot. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
There are no fights on Derek Brunson's schedule right now, anyway. He's busy every day training hopefuls at his Brunson MMA and fitness gym in Wilmington. But in 2018, he's going to be trying to raise that number 7 ranking and continuing to work toward a shot at a championship. That does it for this week's interview. Join us next week when our guest will be Vivian Howard, the star of the PBS series A Chef's Life. Here's a preview.
We sent it to South Carolina Public Television, and they have a reputation for being a presenting station for shows that are distributed nationally. And so they said, okay, we think we like this. We want to show it to national PBS. So they showed our little 11-minute sizzle reel to national PBS, and national PBS said, we think we like this. But what they need to do is make 13 of them. They all need to be, 24 minutes long, and then we'll consider distributing it.
That's next week with Vivian Howard, right here on the podcast. If you know someone who you think would be a good interview for an upcoming episode, send me an email, jevans@wect.com. And if you like what you heard in this podcast, leave a review or a rating. It would help us bring in more listeners. And you could win a cool WECT travel mug. Here's what you need to do. Leave that rating or review and take a screenshot of it. Email me the screenshot, jevans@wect.com, and you could win that WECT travel coffee mug. I'm John Evans. Thanks for joining us for this episode of One on One.